we've all imagined what it would be like to live in a zombie show. And you know what? It's just such an interesting topic to think and talk about. So I've decided to list everything people get wrong about zombie TV shows, starting with what zombies actually want to eat. Brain munchers. Everyone screams they eat brains when zombies show up. That specific craving appears in exactly one place, Return of the Living Dead, and it's a movie, not a show. All the TV zombies I've seen, they'll tear into whatever flesh they reach first. The Walking Dead spent 11 seasons showing walkers ripping into stomachs, arms, throats, anywhere vulnerable. No zombie ever stopped mid-bite thinking, wait, I need the cerebral cortex specifically. In Z Nation, the undead devour entire bodies, organs and all, with zero preference for gray matter. Fear the Walking Dead shows the freshly turned attacking faces because that's what's closest when someone falls. The brain-eating thing became a meme that infected pop culture harder than any virus infected the shows. iZombie actually uses brains as a plot device, but Liv Moore eats them to absorb memories, not because zombies instinctively crave them. She's solving murders, not following biological programming. Even there, regular zombies in full-on mode attack everything. Santa Clarita Diet had Drew Barrymore's Sheila eating specific organs for specific reasons, carefully selecting what keeps her functional, but again, conscious choice, not zombie instinct. Dead Set threw Big Brother contestants into a Walker nightmare where victims got shredded indiscriminately. The myth persists because one comedy horror film made it iconic. And now every zombie discussion gets derailed by people correcting something that was never true for TV in the first place. But if zombies never wanted brains, why does every survivor aim for the head? Hold that thought, because the answer connects to a pattern these shows hide in plain sight, and it starts with something you've definitely noticed, but never questioned. Speed demons. Slow zombies are the universal standard, right? Tell that to the runners. Half the genre treats undead like marathon champions on bath salts, and the other half acts like shambling is a law of nature. Neither side is completely right. The Walking Dead built its empire on walkers that lumber at 1 mile per hour, creating tension through numbers rather than speed. You can jog past 5 walkers easy, but 500? That's a wall of death grinding forward. Black Summer flipped the script so violently it gave viewers whiplash. Zombies there sprint full tilt the second they turn, tackling victims like linebackers. No shambling tutorial phase. 1 minute, someone's bitten. Next minute, they're crossing a parking lot faster than you can process what's happening. Kingdom's zombies stay dormant during daylight, but when the sun drops, they explode into motion. Not quite sprinting, but aggressive enough that Joseon-era weapons barely keep them back. All of Us Are Dead took high school students and infected them with a virus that turned some into hyper-aggressive speedsters who could parkour up walls. These weren't your grandfather's zombies. They were what happens when you mix undead with actual athleticism and zero fear of injury. Z Nation threw in different zombie types, including blasters who explode and sprinters who make Olympic athletes look lazy. Day of the Dead. Bloodline showed zombies that could think and run, which is basically nightmare fuel. Even within single shows, speed varies. Fear the Walking Dead's early walkers moved slightly faster than their main show counterparts, creating debates about regional virus differences that never got official answers. The speed question isn't about what zombies can do, it's about what terrifies audiences. Slow zombies represent the inevitability you can run, but eventually you'll tire and they won't. Fast zombies represent chaos. There's no planning, no strategy, just immediate visceral panic. Shows pick their speed based on what fear they're selling. The misconception is thinking one version is correct when both serve completely different narrative purposes. Speed changes everything about survival tactics, but there's something even more broken in these shows, something that makes speed irrelevant. And once you see it, you'll realize survivors have been fighting wrong the entire time. Sense makers. Zombies see you, smell you, hear you pick your sensory nightmare. Shows can't agree on which senses work, creating a mess of contradictory survival strategies that make no biological sense. Welcome to the inconsistency that quietly breaks every series. The Walking Dead established early that walkers track by sight and sound primarily, with smell playing a backup role. Cover yourself in walker guts, and you're invisible because you smell dead. Except that logic falls apart when walkers are shown following blood trails or ignoring gut-covered humans who move wrong. In one season, covering yourself works flawlessly. By season 7, the same trick barely helps. Black Summer zombies seem entirely sight-based, drawn to movement like predators tracking prey animals, but they'll still burst through doors following sounds. Z Nation had zombies that tracked via an unexplained sixth sense, finding humans hidden in places sight and sound couldn't reach, almost like the virus networked their brains into a hive detection system. Kingdom's undead stay dormant in daylight, not because they can't sense anything, but because the resurrection plant controlling them only activates at night. All of Us Are Dead showed infected students initially drawn by the sound of screaming and panic, but later episodes had them tracking by movement through windows. iZombie treated zombies in full-on mode as basically feral animals with heightened senses across the board, while Liv retained human-level perception. The inconsistency creates impossible situations. A character hides behind a door, breathing heavily, and the zombie walks past, cut to the next scene where a zombie hears someone whisper from inside a locked car. Every show needs stealth mechanics for tension, but none commit to actual rules. They adjust zombie senses scene by scene based on what the plot requires. Viewers internalize one show's logic, then get confused when another series treats detection completely differently. There's no right answer because writers prioritize drama over consistency. The misconception is that zombies follow coherent sensory rules, when really they follow narrative convenience. But sensory confusion is nothing compared to the biggest biological impossibility every show ignores, and once you see it, you can't unsee how little sense any of this makes. Rot-proof. Zombies should decompose. They're dead tissue exposed to elements, bacteria, insects. Give them 2 weeks and they're soup. Give them 2 years and they're dust. Yet shows parade years-old walkers around like decay doesn't exist. Biology takes a permanent vacation the moment someone turns. The Walking Dead spans over a decade in universe. Those Season 1 walkers shuffling around Atlanta should be skeletal fragments by Season 11. Instead, they're still mobile, still biting, still somehow structurally intact enough to tear flesh. Sure, some look more rotted than others, but none reach the logical endpoint where connective tissue fails and bones collapse into piles. Fear the Walking Dead takes place in hot, humid environments perfect for accelerated decomposition. Walkers should be liquid in months. They're not. Black Summer shows fresh zombies and older ones, but even the old ones retain enough muscle and tendon function to sprint. Kingdom at least tries explaining this with the resurrection plant supernatural element, keeping corpses animated, giving a fantasy explanation for ignoring science. All of Us Are Dead has a viral origin, but those zombies spend weeks in classrooms with no food or water and somehow maintain enough muscle mass to chase people. Z Nation goes post-apocalypse far enough that zombies should be archaeological exhibits. Yet Murphy encounters fully mobile walkers years after the initial outbreak. Dead Set compressed its timeline to 1 week, smartly avoiding the decay question entirely. Santa Clarita Diet actually addressed this. Sheila had to eat specific proteins to prevent her body breaking down, finally acknowledging that undead flesh needs maintenance. But that's one show out of dozens. The truth? Decay would end every zombie threat within months, but functioning zombies are required for ongoing shows. So biology gets ignored. Winter should freeze zombies solid. Summer heat should cook them. Rain should erode exposed tissue. Insects should colonize every corpse. None of this happens because practical TV production needs zombies that still look recognizably humanish for audience connection while lasting multiple seasons. The misconception is thinking shows operate on real-world timelines when they actually exist in a magical preservation bubble where entropy takes a nap. Ignore decay, and zombies can last forever. But shows can't ignore the infection rules the same way, except they do. And the contradictions here break the entire concept of quarantine, which makes you wonder, how did anyone fail to contain these outbreaks? Bite variants. Get bitten, turn into a zombie. Simple rule, right? Except turning time varies wildly from instant to days, with no pattern explaining the differences. Some shows say everyone's infected already, others make the bite itself infectious. Pick your pandemic model because consistency left the chat. The Walking Dead revealed everyone carries the pathogen. Dormant death activates it, regardless of cause. But walker bites kill you faster through fever and infection, presumably from bacteria in rotting mouths rather than special zombie venom. Makes sense until you realize some characters die from bites in hours, while others last days. Jim in Season 1 took nearly 2 days. Shane's bite victim, Amy, turned in minutes. The variants suggest bite location matters, but the show never commits to that logic. Black Summer treats bites as almost instant transmission seconds after contact people are turning, barely time to say goodbye. This creates entirely different survival stakes. All of Us Are Dead introduced multiple zombie variants, including one student whose antibody-positive blood made her partially immune, showing inconsistent reactions even within the same outbreak. Z Nation had bite turn times all over the place, with some people zombifying mid-conversation and others having hours. Kingdom kept its fairly consistent bite at night, turn by next nightfall, but daylight bites didn't spread infection, tying everything to the resurrection plant's nocturnal nature. Fear the Walking Dead shares Walking Dead's everyone's infected canon, but showed early pandemic victims turning faster than later ones, implying either the virus evolved or bodies built minor resistance. iZombie Zombie made scratch transmission possible, not just bites, and turning took predictable time based on contact severity. Day of the Dead. Bloodline had variable turning times with zero explanation, purely plot-based. The underlying problem? Shows want flexibility to create tension. Fast turns work for immediate horror and impossible choices. Slow burns allow emotional farewells and debates about mercy killing. Rather than pick one system, most shows cherry-pick per scene. The misconception is that Infection follows medical logic when it actually follows emotional beats the writers need for specific moments. Viewers notice this subconsciously, and it breaks immersion, even if they can't articulate why. Inconsistent Infection rules create one massive plot hole that every show pretends doesn't exist. Keep this question in your head. If Infection works differently every time, how do shows justify the initial outbreak spreading at all? The answer isn't what you think, and it connects directly to why the military always disappears. Death rules. In some shows, everyone's infected, just waiting for death to activate. In others, you need direct contact with zombie fluids. Some require bites. Some allow scratches. One show even floated airborne transmission before abandoning it. The genre can't decide how people become zombies, creating a logic nightmare. The Walking Dead's "we're all infected" reveal in Season 2 changed everything. Die from a heart attack? Wake up as a walker. Fall off a roof? Walker. Starve to death? Believe it or not, walker. The bite just kills you faster from infection. This means every survivor is a ticking time bomb, and every quiet death scene comes with the tension of when will they turn? Fear the Walking Dead inherited this rule set, but muddied it with Strand's Season 6 storyline suggesting some people might have natural immunity, a thread they dropped immediately. Black Summer never explicitly confirms universal infection, but shows people turning after injuries that didn't involve bites, suggesting either everyone's infected or the virus spreads through environmental contact. Kingdom's Resurrection Plant creates zombies through direct ingestion or infected blood contact, meaning people who avoid those remain human even after death, a completely different system that makes quarantine actually effective. All of Us Are Dead showed spread through bite and scratch, but blood transfusions didn't infect recipients, creating odd inconsistency about fluid transmission. Z Nation's Murphy became immune after being bitten pre-zombification by multiple infected, suggesting exposure amount matters, but regular people never built immunity no matter how many close calls. The lack of clear transmission rules demolishes practical survival planning. If everyone's infected, securing locations is futile. Any natural death creates an internal threat. If bites are required, you can actually build safe zones. Shows want both options available, so they never fully commit. Writers treat infection rules as adjustable sliders, turned up or down per episode for maximum drama. The misconception is that each show has consistent infection mechanics when most have situation-dependent mechanics wearing consistency's costume. Unclear rules make every survival plan worthless, but that's not even the biggest problem. What comes next reveals why organized civilization falls in every show, and it has nothing to do with zombies being dangerous. Military collapse. The armed forces fall immediately in every show, clearing the board for civilian survivor stories. But militaries train for chemical, biological, and radiological threats constantly. A slow-moving infection shouldn't delete organized military response in 48 hours, yet it always does. The Walking Dead showed scattered military remnants, but never explained why the full force collapsed so completely. One scene had helicopters and coordinated evacuation. The next scene had abandoned tanks on highways. Fear the Walking Dead at least attempted showing the collapse progression of soldiers following orders to shoot civilians. Moral breakdown. Units fragmenting when commanders died. Still happened impossibly fast. Black Summer kept military presence off-screen entirely except for one rogue unit, skipping the explanation for why thousands of trained personnel with armor and air support just vanished. The Kingdom had the historical advantage Joseon-era soldiers with swords and arrows made sense falling to supernatural plague. Modern equipment would trivialize those zombies, but period-appropriate warfare created believable struggles. All of Us Are Dead trapped a special forces team inside the school through a series of bad decisions, showing soldiers could fight zombies effectively until human panic caused friendly fire situations. Z Nation showed surviving military morphing into warlords and fascist groups, which at least acknowledged that military infrastructure wouldn't just evaporate. The Walking Dead. World Beyond revealed the Civic Republic military as a functioning force controlling resources, finally admitting the military wouldn't completely collapse. Dead Set avoided the question by setting everything in the Big Brother house with minimal outside context. The real issue? A functioning military ends the zombie threat, killing dramatic tension. Modern armies have flamethrowers, explosives, armored vehicles, aircraft, and most importantly, disciplined formations trained to maintain combat effectiveness under stress. Even slow zombies become target practice. Fast zombies struggle against coordinated machine gun fire. Shows need the military gone so civilian characters can fumble through survival. The misconception is that zombies would naturally overwhelm organized forces, when reality suggests it would take catastrophic command failure or something far worse than walking corpses to break a functioning military. Most shows handwave this with vague, "it spread too fast" explanations, but that doesn't track when we see how slowly outbreaks actually progress in the same shows. The military vanishes too quickly, but their disappearance enables something worse. Survivors making decisions so stupid you'll scream at your screen. And it's not just bad writing. There's actually a reason shows force characters to be incompetent. A reason that exposes what zombie shows really are. Weapon masters. Characters grab whatever's nearby and suddenly they're expert zombie killers. A nurse who's never thrown a punch becomes a katana-wielding samurai in 3 episodes. An accountant turns into Robin Hood with a crossbow by season 2. Muscle memory and training apparently download via adrenaline. The Walking Dead's Michonne emerged wielding a katana with samurai-level precision, which the show eventually explained through her pre-apocalypse past. But Carol went from abused housewife to tactical operator through sheer experience, gaining skills that take years of training. Daryl mastered every weapon he touched despite being a hunter, not a combat specialist. Fear the Walking Dead's Madison went from guidance counselor to ruthless leader who could handle firearms like she attended tactical academies. Black Summer at least kept characters looking clumsy and desperate, with realistic fumbling and missed shots. People fought ugly, made mistakes, and got exhausted. All of Us Are Dead showed high school students improvising weapons and tactics, but kept them looking inexperienced. Their victories came from luck and numbers rather than sudden competence. Kingdom's warriors already had sword training from their society's structure, making their zombie fighting skills believable within context. Z Nation leaned into absurdity, with characters pulling off impossible shots and melee combinations, but the show's tone acknowledged its video game logic. A Zombies Live gained fighting abilities from eating brains of trained combatants, actually explaining her sudden competence through the show's supernatural rules. Most shows want competent action without putting in the work to justify it. Training montages are boring, so characters just figure it out off-screen between episodes. The misconception is that survival instinct translates to combat proficiency when they're completely different skill sets. You don't become a marksman because zombies are chasing you. You become someone who wastes ammo and gets killed. But realistic incompetence makes for frustrating television, so everyone becomes an action hero through narrative osmosis. Characters become warriors overnight, which would matter if resources were actually scarce. But they're not, and this next pattern is so blatant, so impossible to miss, you've probably rage tweeted about it. Resource abundance. Ammunition never runs out. Gasoline stays fresh indefinitely. Canned food lasts forever. Batteries maintain charge for years. Shows treat resources like respawning video game pickups instead of finite supplies that define survival. The Walking Dead characters fire hundreds of rounds per season, yet always find more ammunition. Daryl's crossbow bolts multiply like biblical loaves. Vehicles run on gas scavenged years after refinement processes stopped, despite gasoline degrading within months. They find fresh food in abandoned stores seasons into the apocalypse, when, realistically, everything should be expired or looted. Fear the Walking Dead had characters driving across Mexico burning fuel that shouldn't exist in usable form. Black Summer actually showed resource scarcity characters counted bullets, fought over single cans of food, made desperate choices over bottled water. That realism lasted 1 season before season 2 increased resource availability for plot convenience. All of Us Are Dead trapped students in a school with limited food, creating genuine resource tension, but they stretched 3 days of supplies across weeks through TV magic. Kingdom avoided modern resource problems through historical setting, but still had arrows and swords that never broke despite constant use. Z Nation acknowledged the resource problem by making the cross-country mission about securing supplies, but characters still had more ammo than logic allowed. The fundamental problem? Resource scarcity creates slow, unglamorous survival situations. Spending episodes searching for batteries or fuel doesn't make exciting television. Fighting zombies with limited ammo means carefully rationed action scenes, not spectacle. Shows choose entertainment over realism every single time. The misconception is that survivors would find functional supplies years into collapse, when most resources have strict expiration dates. That gas in the underground tank? Varnished. Those batteries in the store? Corroded. That canned food from 2011? Botulism roulette. But acknowledging reality would require characters spending more time managing logistics than fighting zombies. So resources magically appear when plots need them. Infinite bullets and fresh gas years later. Convenient. But resources aren't even close to the most absurd thing survivors ignore. What's coming next makes resource magic look scientifically plausible by comparison. Medical miracles. Characters survive injuries that should kill or cripple them. Stab wounds heal in days. Gunshots barely slow people down. Infections don't happen. Blood loss is a suggestion. Modern medicine vanished, but everyone's got video game health regeneration. The Walking Dead had Rick shot and comatose for weeks in an abandoned hospital with zero medical care, waking up fine despite dehydration alone being fatal. Carl survived a gunshot to the head with frontier medicine and some bed rest. Daryl got shot through the torso with an arrow, walked it off in an episode. Glenn fell off a dumpster into a horde, somehow emerged unbitten through sheer plot armor. Fear the Walking Dead's Nick survived multiple serious injuries through luck and determination rather than medical intervention. Black Summer kept injuries more grounded. People who got hurt stayed hurt. Wounds slowed them down. Infection remained a threat. All of Us Are Dead showed teenagers wrapping wounds with torn shirts and somehow avoiding sepsis despite zero sterilization. Kingdom at least acknowledged limited medical knowledge through historical context, but still had characters surviving sword wounds that should have been fatal. Z Nation went full comic book with Murphy surviving bites that killed everyone else, establishing supernatural healing as part of the show's tone. The Walking Dead, World Beyond had characters performing emergency surgery with scavenged supplies, which would realistically end in death from infection. The medical impossibilities serve narrative purposes. Main characters need to survive injuries to continue their arcs. Realistic medical consequences mean characters permanently disabled or dead, shrinking the cast. Shows cheat by having people tough through trauma that would hospitalize modern patients with full medical support. The misconception is that humans are resilient enough to walk off serious injuries when we're actually fragile meatbags that require sterile environments and proper treatment to heal. Zombie shows operate in a world where antibiotics don't matter, and the human immune system has cheat codes activated. Bodies heal impossibly fast, but broken minds? Those stay perfectly functional. And that's where zombie shows reveal their biggest lie, the one that makes the entire premise collapse. Mental fortitude. Everyone handles apocalyptic trauma like seasoned war veterans. PTSD doesn't exist. People watch loved ones die, kill former friends, face constant death threats, and remain functional. Psychological breakdown is reserved for dramatic one-off episodes, not the constant reality it should be. The Walking Dead's characters accumulate enough trauma to destroy minds, yet continue making tactical decisions. Carol watches her daughter die, becomes a ruthless killer, and only has one breakdown arc before returning to competence. Rick hallucinates Lori briefly, then moves on. Morgan has the only sustained mental health storyline, becoming the exception that proves how unrealistically stable everyone else remains. Fear the Walking Dead's Madison transforms from educator to brutal leader without the psychological transition that dramatic personality shift requires. Black Summer's characters act shell-shocked and desperate, which feels more authentic, but they still function in coordinated groups despite trauma that should create paralysis. All of Us Are Dead showed teenagers experiencing their first deaths and violence, giving them realistic emotional reactions and poor decision-making from panic. That lasted until plot required them to toughen up fast. Kingdom's characters lived in a hierarchical society with different emotional outlets, but still adapted to undead nightmare remarkably fast. Z Nation played psychological damage for laughs, with Murphy's existential crisis about being partially zombie treated as quirky rather than mentally devastating. Real psychological research on disaster survivors shows massive rates of PTSD, depression, anxiety disorders, and substance abuse. That's from temporary disasters with eventual rescue. Permanent apocalypse with no hope of normalcy? The human mind wasn't built for that. Most people would become non-functional. Shows need characters who can keep fighting, keep planning, keep caring enough to survive. Realistic trauma response would create catatonic survivors hiding in corners, unable to process their new reality. The misconception is that humans adapt to extreme stress easily, when our brains literally rewire themselves around trauma, often in ways that impair function. But depicting realistic psychological collapse would make depressing television with passive characters. So everyone gets Hollywood resilience. Everyone's mentally unbreakable, which would help them make smart decisions. Except they don't. They make the dumbest choices imaginable. And here's the thing, shows need them to be stupid, because smart survivors would reveal a truth these shows desperately hide. Strategic failures. Characters make tactically absurd decisions that viewers spot immediately. They split up in dangerous locations. They trust obvious threats. They ignore basic security. The apocalypse apparently lowers everyone's IQ by 30 points for plot convenience. The Walking Dead has seasons of baffling choices. The group stays at the prison despite it being indefensible long term. They trust the governor multiple times despite obvious red flags. They walk through forests single file instead of covering each other. Alexandria's residents refuse guard duty training until forced. Fear the Walking Dead had Strand repeatedly betraying people with zero consequences until plot required otherwise. Madison making deals with enemies always backfired, yet she kept trying. Black Summer stripped away long-term planning entirely, putting characters in constant reactive panic mode, which at least explained poor choices through chaos. All of Us Are Dead had students making teenager mistakes, which felt appropriate as they're untrained kids improvising. But even the adult characters made baffling calls. Kingdom's characters operated in rigid social hierarchies that prevented questioning authority, explaining some bad strategic choices through cultural context. Z Nation embraced the absurdity, having characters make wild decisions that somehow worked through luck and plot armor. The strategic incompetence serves storytelling over realism. Smart survivors who make optimal choices avoid danger, leading to boring episodes where nothing happens. The show needs characters in life-threatening situations constantly, which requires them making questionable decisions. Some shows justify this with stress, fatigue, or incomplete information. Most just need someone to ignore the obvious danger so the action scene can happen. The misconception is that people would maintain rational thinking under extreme stress, when actually human judgment deteriorates significantly. But shows exaggerate this deterioration beyond believability, because competent survival creates pacing problems. Bad tactics keep danger constant. But there's a bigger question nobody in these shows ever asks. A question that would end the apocalypse if anyone thought about it for 5 minutes. And that brings us to the endgame problem, endgame absence. No show has a real plan for humanity's future. They're stuck in perpetual survival mode, cycling through safe zones that get overrun. Rebuilding civilization requires agriculture, infrastructure, education, governance. Nobody's planting crops, purifying water long-term, or teaching children. They're just postponing death. The Walking Dead spent 11 seasons without meaningful civilization rebuilding. The communities trade and have rudimentary governments, but nobody's addressing generational sustainability. Where are the teachers, the engineers, the doctors training apprentices? Fear the Walking Dead's various settlements rise and fall with no cumulative progress. Black Summer depicts pure survival, no thought of tomorrow, just escaping today. All of Us Are Dead is short-term enough that endgame doesn't apply, but nobody discusses what happens if they survive past rescue. Kingdom's setting means no modern rebuilding, just returning to Joseon-era stability if they eliminate the plague. Z Nation's mission is literally about finding a cure, which is the closest any show comes to actual endgame thinking, but even that's more quest than civilization plan. The Walking Dead, World Beyond introduced the Civic Republic military as a functioning government entity, finally showing organized long-term survival, but kept it mysterious instead of demonstrating how post-apocalyptic civilization actually functions. The absence of endgame reveals these shows aren't about surviving the apocalypse, they're about the apocalypse as a permanent state. Characters aren't trying to rebuild society because that would end the show. They need ongoing threats, constant danger, perpetual crisis. The misconception is that zombie shows are about survival when they're actually about indefinite crisis maintenance. Real survival means establishing sustainable systems, food production, water purification, medical training, defense coordination, population growth. That's boring television. So shows trap characters in eternal present tense danger, cycling through temporary safe zones that inevitably fail, ensuring the crisis never resolves. No plan for tomorrow, just endless survival mode. But that's not laziness, it's intentional. Because if survivors actually rebuilt civilization, they'd realize something about zombie apocalypses that destroys the entire genre: community collapse. Every show assumes humans immediately turn on each other. Cooperation is temporary at best. The real threat becomes other survivors within episodes. But disaster psychology research shows humans actually cooperate more during crises, not less. The Walking Dead made "people are the real monsters" its central theme. The governor, Negan, the Reaper's human antagonists, drive the worst plot lines. Communities fall apart from internal betrayal more than external zombie threats. Fear the Walking Dead doubled down with Strand's betrayals and antagonistic settlements that refuse collaboration. Black Summer showed desperate people fighting over resources in zero-sum conflicts. All of Us Are Dead had students forming protective groups, but adults becoming selfish and violent. Kingdom showed human political scheming continuing despite undead crisis, with nobles protecting their power over public safety. Z Nation actually subverted this somewhat by showing communities successfully cooperating, though villain groups still appeared regularly. The Walking Dead, World Beyond revealed the CRM as an authoritarian force controlling survivors through military might, suggesting large-scale cooperation requires oppression. Research from real disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, wars shows humans form mutual aid networks, share resources, and organize community responses. Looting is rare. Violence is the exception. People become more altruistic under shared threat, but cooperative communities solving problems together don't create compelling drama. Shows need conflict, betrayal, and moral ambiguity. The misconception is that Crisis reveals humanity's inner savagery, when evidence suggests Crisis reveals humanity's collaborative instincts. Zombie shows sell a cynical worldview, where social bonds shatter immediately, but that's entertainment fiction, not supported psychology. Humans turn on each other instantly, which brings us full circle to where we started to that question about headshots, about survival tactics, about everything you thought you knew. Because this final misconception reveals what zombie shows have actually been about all along. If you enjoyed this video and want to see everything people get wrong about zombie movies, click the video on the screen.